So if you are watching,
there you go.
She's already pressed it. So we're now live on Facebook. And I need to switch the volume off on the Facebook Live.
Yes, because we've got a little reverb going.
Oh, good. I've learned where the mute button on Facebook Live is when I do that, so it's all good.
And the production team is in full swing.
And we are producing as we speak.
Oh,
There we
jinx.
go.
Could you not have done that already?
Well, you see, the thing was, now you see, this is it. This is what held me back with this. Because I said to you, is this okay, Angela? And you kind of looked at me like, eh?
Like I normally look at you.
Yeah, like, what's the point?
Welcome.
So I thought, and then David was talking turkey. So because of that, the whole thing was getting a little bit, so I just took it off. So I actually said to you, shall I just go back to what I normally do? And I did.
So as per your live interview group earlier on, I'm going to reel you back in again. And I'm going to invite you to start the session and introduce us and tell us what we're doing tonight.
Well, you see, now there we go. This is Therapists in Conversation. It's episode 15. And we won't go into that. But it's what's holding you back.
Counting by the sounds of it for you.
Yes, counting has always held me back. And I am not ashamed to say it. Never been ashamed to say it. Can I count? Brings me a whole load of interesting situations.
And a whole heap of solutions.
It does actually, yes, yes. There was a time when I had to actually read blood pressures and things like that off of long strips of graphed paper as the little needle was going up and down. And basically when somebody came in one day and said to me, what's the blood pressure doing? And I went, it's fine, it's absolutely perfect. And he went, okay, walked away. Then he came back and said, no. Because this was always the answer that he got from me, or unless there was something wrong. What is it?
I know.
I don't know. I just know that if I take a blood gas right now, it's going to be this and it'll be fine. Please tell me that you can read the blood pressure. Yes, I can, just not the way you do.
That's one of the things about neurodiversity, though, isn't it? Is anyone who has a neurodiversity experience will find solutions for that experience that the rest of the world would not necessarily connect to at that moment in time without an explanation.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting that people think that because you can't do something that they do easily, that you must be thick or clumsy or, you know, just unable to do things.
Is that still the feeling though? Or is that maybe when we were at school, that was the attitude and it's maybe not quite as much now?
I'm on a couple of pages, particularly with dyscalculia, and that is still the case.
Okay.
There are people being told by teachers that their children should be taken away and put into special schools. They shouldn't be mainstreamed. And some people who were in school recently have already, you know, I speak to them occasionally about it and they say, no, if you don't count or you don't spell that well, they just don't pay attention to you at all. Not interested.
Right.
That's disappointing.
It's that mainstreaming pressure on the education system, though, isn't it? That just gets transferred down like gravity onto a child, and therefore the pressure for the school to perform in its league tables.
But again, it's money though, Dave. It's money as well, because they don't have the funding to train the teachers to, first of all, see it and recognize it for what it is. Because let's face it, we can be very good at hiding these things.
Yeah, and that's what I mean about that solution focus. When you've got that experience, you create the solution that works for you. The rest of the world won't see it unless they dig past it. And then they're going, well, I don't understand what you're doing, so there must be a problem.
Yeah. My biggest thing when I was doing things was the case of somebody would come and say, you know, there's a simpler way to do that. And it would just strike fear and dread into me, because I'd learned one way to do something, and it may be the most complicated way known to man, but I knew it and I was comfortable with it.
So then it comes to the question of define simple.
Yeah.
Because what you were doing was working for you. So for you, that was the simple option.
Yeah.
And this new complicated way wasn't.
Yeah. I mean, one of the most interesting things was that counting in French was an absolute just experience, an adventure and a half. Because, of course, when you get to 80, you know, 80, 420s, what? 42s, what? How does that work? And then suddenly one day it just clicked. And even now I can do it better in French than I can in English.
So the next time I need to get you to do any numbers, I'll get you to do it in French then.
Only if it doesn't mean dividing or multiplying.
I'll just do it myself. It's fine.
Yes, that's a very good idea.
And that I work with a neurodiversity organisation up in Scotland, and one of the things that struck me with that working relationship was neurodiversity is the biggest thing that holds young people back in any scenario. And for myself, as a child, I was told I would never write more than 2 sides of A4 paper. And that stuck with me for so long, that perception of what the education system deemed as my capacity. I actually started to kind of justify
live up to it
and go, well, there you go. You want 2 sides of A4, I'll give you 2 sides of A4. Job's done. And it became that kind of barrier that I couldn't break past because it had been set in stone almost. And you know, my dyslexia was the cause of that. So for me, what held me back anyway was the perception that what I was being told was accurate because I was being told by professionals.
Yeah. And it doesn't just stop there. It's a case of being told that you're stupid by a teacher is one thing. But when the teacher who has authority over your parents also tells your parents that you're stupid, they believe that. Or at least in my case. So nothing.
I would really like to hope that people are not still being called stupid in schools.
Oh, I think you'd be surprised.
Officially, you would never be told that.
Officially, you'd be challenged.
What happens in the privacy of the classroom, outside of parents' evening, outside of public presentations, outside of public policy, that's a very different scenario. Then you're talking about the relationship between individuals.
Yeah.
And
I think it's a case of looking at things. Is it a silk purse or a sow's ear?
I didn't hear that, sorry.
Is it a silk purse or a sow's ear?
There you go.
Depends on how you dress it. Still the same thing underneath.
And at the end of it, the relationship that a parent has with education is based on the relationship that they had as a child with education. And that's the same with doing homework with kids. It's the same with doing anything to do with that educational arena. It's tainted by what that parent experienced.
To be perfectly honest with you, I think that most parents these days have an absolute dread of even being asked to look at homework with children because they've totally changed how it was done.
Yeah, I experienced that with my children. It was a totally different way of learning.
But then there are so many different ways of learning. It's difficult to shoehorn everybody in the classroom into the one way of learning and expect them all to be able to do it. And just because some can't, it could mean 2 or 3 things. It could mean that they're finding it challenging. It could mean that they just don't care, or it could mean that actually they're so damn clever that they're way beyond what you're trying to teach them.
They're bored.
You know, it's
they're bored.
Einstein's theory of education. If you're going to try and judge a goldfish by its capacity to climb a tree, then you're always going to think that goldfish is a failure.
Yeah.
You know, and was it Michael J. Fox who said, if you're teaching a child and it's not learning what you're teaching it the way you're teaching it, it's never going to until you change the way you're teaching it.
Yeah, it's very much a case of perception on both sides. And that understanding not being there is a big thing to hold you back. It's a big block.
Perception is the biggest hurdle for everybody on the planet, because we perceive our capacity based on what we're told our capacity is until we know different.
Yeah, and a lot of the times we don't get to know different because we live down to other people's expectations.
It's interesting. I spent the weekend working towards another certificate, obviously. I spent the weekend redoing and resubmitting some assignments for the training and education qualification I'm doing. And they do have a massive focus on neurodiversity, on how different people learn, on learning styles, on submodalities, and all of that stuff. And I wonder if some people are taught to that level and then forget it by the time they get back to the classroom because they've been teaching for 20 odd years. So I've been doing youth work for 25 years. I would like to hope that I have always taught in a way that has been open to whatever's going on, and that I'm now more aware. So I will be even more aware when I'm teaching in future. But I wondered if maybe some people, they're doing the training just to tick the boxes and perhaps aren't following that through. I'm hoping that's not the case, and that when people are actually going through the degree programs and everything else to teach in schools, that these things are kind of really drummed into the teachers before they get there. But that doesn't then account for people that were taught 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when the curriculum might have been different, for them to learn how to teach and how to look out for these different aspects.
It's also, I think, the capacity in the real world to be that flexible when you have a room of 30, in some cases 30 plus individuals who are not responding to one modality, for you to be able to keep them in the room, effectively in the room, while you get to what their mode is. Because children are very, very quick to go, no, sorry, I'm not learning it. Bang, shutters go up. And then you've got to get those shutters down so you can get the modality in that works for them while keeping all the other shutters open. And it's such a false economy to believe that mainstream education is going to be able to juggle that at the same time and keep everybody learning in the environment that's been created for them. Because I think the mainstreaming, bottlenecking, funneling of education based on a curriculum that's in essence designed 250 years ago,
designed for factories,
is not the world in which we're in.
No, and particularly even now in universities, Pavlov's dogs is still being used as a conditioning behavior example, whereas perhaps it should actually be the ping of a mobile phone.
I think as we're kind of in the thrust of a digital revolution, just as 250 years ago we were in the thrust of an industrial revolution, maybe we should be teaching people the impact of such revolutions.
Yeah.
And the Luddite revolution, where people went, actually, do you know what? This isn't really a good thing for us to all go down this one path.
I'm a very proud Luddite, as Angela will be able to tell you, because she usually ends up being the one who I'm crying to. I don't know how to work this. That does tend to hold me back, because it's a belief more than anything else. And it's a belief because of what we've just been talking about. Because stupid is a butter that spreads over everything.
And when Angela gets that phone call, Angela holds some emotional stress release points, breathes deeply, and then responds to it.
And it sends me a message with a picture of cake on it.
No, it's one of those things that we don't realise just how varied and diverse the one particular action, word, offhand remark the kind of effect it can have. It's like a dandelion root. It taps a taproot. It just goes right the way deep down inside. And it can sit there for years. And then suddenly one day that situation will come up again, and there's embarrassment, there's shame, there's inability to function properly. The brain shuts down. Everything just goes a little bit weird. Your focus changes completely. And you become a dithering wreck.
And you've probably forgotten the situation. You've forgotten who said that word to you. All the rest of it consciously has left your awareness, but it's buried itself deep.
It's still there.
Yeah.
And the nerve on that scar is still very, very raw. And it has an impact on the relationships with children who are now live in that situation, because you will do everything you can to avoid a confrontation or a reawakening of that nerve ending. I think there is, there's been some amazing attempts to get past that over the last sort of decade or so within the education sector. But there's something that, I'd love to be able to see, certainly with maths and science, there'd be a real shake up about how that gets explained. And I think there's two really key factors that have kind of been put into the public consciousness, but have never been maximized to their potential. One is the MacGyver science book for boys. And CBS, you hold the rights for MacGyver. Come on, let's have a conversation. Because that's science in the real world for excitement and understand how science works for solutions, rather than let's do an experiment to see something go fizz, bang, wallop. Great, brilliant, fabulous. I don't know what it did, but it went fizz, it went bang, and there was a wallop at the end.
And that's your engagement for most children.
Right.
And then I'm never going to use that again because I don't know what it was for, and I don't remember what was in it, and I don't have any practical real world applications for it.
Yeah.
It's just like we're taught taught maths in school, but we're not really taught finance. We're not taught how to cope with money.
Yeah.
So there's all those
right.
practical skills that are just completely lacking.
Yeah.
And don't even get us started on emotions and how to deal with your emotions. That's not taught at school either.
You can't really teach something that you don't know how to work yourself. Although it's done a lot.
Well, when back in the day when I was looking at joining the Navy and actually going in to teach, when I had my kind of tour around the area, and I was told you only need to make sure that you've learned one lesson ahead. And you will be put on the spot to teach stuff that's not your comfort zone. And you just need to make sure you've learned one lesson ahead. And I wonder how true that is of a lot of teachers. I'm guessing supply teachers would definitely be the case, but
I can tell you that's probably why there's a lot of shouting and bawling that goes on. Because as soon as somebody has the temerity who may have read the next lesson, has the temerity to say, see when you do that, does this not happen? And you don't know, where's your fallback?
And heaven forbid anybody should actually have already got an understanding of a topic ahead of what the curriculum says, this is what you need to teach.
Yeah.
I can remember being at school, being taught the Cuban Missile Crisis. Happened to have had family members that were at sea at the time as part of the blockade. Those stories were part of my growing up.
There's probably quite a few people who think the Bay of Pigs is a food chain.
Yeah.
Isn't it? No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
However, this is only one part of what can be holding people back. And it's more or less a case of, is this the root of the issue as to why people, particularly people who perhaps are going into their second career because their first career they've discovered was less than totally fulfilling, or they've had a change of circumstances, or some things have happened, and it could be that their confidence has been knocked. It could be that they've just been out of work for a long time because they've been bringing up families. It could be a whole load of things, including this pandemic brain situation that we seem to be having. However, there's a lot of things that go on the abyss between the idea that perhaps we can do something different and the actually making it happen. What holds us back when we do that?
Fear of the consequences.
Are those the consequences of failure or of success, Pauline?
It could be either. Some people are
I've got
afraid
both.
of.
You're just greedy.
I got a certificate in that, she says.
No one ever got that one. Can I have one?
I'll make you one.
Relationship with success as well. Pauline touched on it just there. It can actually be what holds us back.
Yeah.
Relationship with money holds us back from achieving more money. The whole, everything comes down to what is our perception of what the outcome could, might, or might not be.
And is
So
that
is it all
mirrored from
mindset?
our worthiness?
Sorry, Liz, I missed what you said there.
Is it mirrored from our worthiness, our idea, our perception of how worthy we are for it or of it?
Or has it come from the stories we were told as kids?
Yeah.
So you don't want to be like that family down the street who've got a new car every week because they're clearly drug dealers. It's not because dad's off working hundreds of hours and actually knocking his pan in to do a really good job in this big corporate organization. They're clearly bad people because they've got all this money coming.
I was going to say there's a generational gap there, because when I was a child, it was a case of keeping up with the Joneses because the Joneses were posh. Not drug dealers, posh.
Yeah. so it's just differences. So perhaps the keeping up the Joneses aspect, but would there not have been a psychological component to that of people were doing something well beyond their means because they had to keep up with the house down the street?
Oh yeah, we had a whole thing for it. There's a whole place where I come from, and basically there were two ways that it was described: all fur coat and no knickers, or kippers and curtains. all they could afford to, because everything with the facade was all there, all the fancy house, the fancy car, the driveway, the garden, the whole thing, and the clothes and everything like that was, so fur coat on the outside. As soon as you were in the house, it was, all they could eat was kippers, and there was just curtains on the wall and nothing else. Because it was all shown on the outside, which actually is very much, for me, what it's like at the moment with Instagram and Facebook and eyebrows you can see from the moon and things like that.
I hope you're not talking about mine.
No, yeah. Yours are minuscule compared to some of these. Mine are invisible. But it's one of those things that for a long time now we've been outwardly validating looks, perceptions of wealth and well-being, and it's all going on pictures, and pictures can be made up.
And it's also that instant presentation of success. It's like, I have to have it now. I'm not going to save. I'm not going to work towards this. I need it now.
Yeah. You see, that's an interesting thing.
I've got it now.
Yeah, you have to work for everything you've got. That was another thing. You won't get anywhere unless you work hard. Now, if you're a naturally lazy arse bugger, you're not going to get there, are you? Unless you win the lottery.
Right, I'm away.
Yeah. Well, when you get to my age, it helps to pass the time. But it's one of those things, isn't it? It definitely is. There's facets of it all in different levels of our conscious awareness And I'm sure that we have a few people watching that would be sitting here with their own ideas on that, but we'll never find out unless they tell us.
So what's holding them back from?
Yeah.
Well, currently, as I keep glancing over to their side, there's nobody currently watching us live on Facebook, which is my dream scenario. I hate being on Facebook Live. That's what's holding me back. There you go.
Is that what it is?
I don't like being on Facebook, and I don't like people watching me when I'm on Facebook because I get all shy.
We should have a drum roll. Basically, Angela did her first live by herself on her own the other day, and it was fine. It was
it was like my 5th or 6th. I've done another one today as well. I do them. I just don't like them.
Like it.
Oh
I keep them short, and as Pauline will know, I did one from the top of Snowdon.
You did. You did.
I missed that one.
So yes, I have done a number of them. I'm not a fan. And I had a really interesting chat with people yesterday, trying to kind of look at this whole what's holding you back thing. And I was talking about doing the Facebook Lives and talking about my discomfort with them and what was going on around there. And it came down to the fact of, I don't want to look like a prat. I used the word tube and I then had to explain that to the non-Scots in the room, but I didn't want to look like a prat. And it is just that point of, if I've got a script and it's really obvious I'm reading from a script. If I've not got a script, I'm going to forget something, or I'm going to fluff my words, or I'm going to do the ums and ahs and, oh my gosh, what was I supposed to say? What? Huh? And get really flustered. And when you're live, you don't have the option of pressing stop, delete, start again, because there may be some people watching you. So my first ever live was a case of, my main aim here is to get on and off before anyone knows I'm here. And I achieved it. So I was very happy.
And the compromise is that you have your topic that you want to speak about, and you break that down and you go, I'm going from here to here to here. That's it. Job's done. 20 seconds on each. Boom.
Well,
if I get the topic sorted, then I've got no excuse not to do it.
Yeah, but the people who are watching don't know what you're going to talk about either.
Procrastination.
The people who are watching don't know what you're going to say or what you've missed or what you've forgotten.
Yeah, but that's not the story that's happening in my head. The story that's happening in my head is, you're going to make a prat of yourself.
Yeah, I'll make a prat of myself every bloody day.
Well, as do I when I'm with people. I don't do it on my own.
I do it on my own too. Yeah, I'm a constant source of amusement for myself.
I'm pretty sure it was Gene Kelly when he was asked about missing dance steps when he was doing performances, is, I'm the choreographer. No one else knows whether I've missed a step or not but me. So as long as I just keep dancing,
yeah,
no one else needs to know that.
So just keep talking.
There you go.
But I've got to press the start button first, right?
The music has to start at some point. And
You know how to talk. You've been doing it since you were a little girl.
And many people have regretted the fact that my Auntie Mary taught me how to talk. Yes. So my mother says that was my auntie's payback for when my cousin was little, wearing a white dress, and my mum gave her chocolate. So apparently that was the payback that my aunt taught me how to talk. And I've not stopped since.
Well, you just ran with it, didn't you? But this is it, isn't it? We can build things up so much that it becomes this massive, just mountain range, never mind a mountain, a total mountain range. And yeah, it's because we're standing so close to it is the reason that we can't actually see round it, over it, through it.
Or we're 3/4 of the way up and the clouds have come in and you can't see beyond your feet. But yeah, a little bit more clouds than that.
Oh, that one then. That one.
Other side.
Other side, yeah, that one. See, made a prat of myself. Don't care. Not interested anymore. When you've fallen in the midden as many times as I have, and come out obviously having fallen in the midden, then you know there's no point There's no point in being ashamed. There's no point in being embarrassed.
So I don't think I'm ashamed by it. It's just I don't like it. I'm not doing it. You can't make me.
We can make you. We can make you. Facebook knows how to make that happen.
It's all good fun, isn't it?
Yeah, until somebody presses a button, and then you suddenly, because once you are live, you're live, and there are some things that can happen that are interesting. And sometimes you have to do a running commentary of what's happening that people can't see, so that they understand that you've been interrupted. You don't just shut the thing down and say.
You mean like the fact that when you press record and you go live on Facebook and then it starts talking to you on a different screen and you can't find the pause button, you can't find the mute button because the headset's coming through for my voice, but the speakers, I've learned that one. But anyway, enough about me and what's holding me back. What's holding everybody else back?
Go on, Pauline.
Well, mine was definitely fear. Fear ran my life, I must say. And then I discovered that it was the ego, the script, that negative voice in your head that was directing my life. It wasn't what I was choosing. So until I discovered that, fear ran my life.
And have you now overcome, or is it still work in progress?
It's still work in progress. Yeah. I mean, it crops up all the time, but you can choose to ignore it and do what you would choose.
It's having those two gremlins in your head, isn't it? One's Mother and one's Spike.
It's a bit of a civil war going on.
And I think fear is one of those things where it is definitely Spike shouting louder than Mugwai. Not wanting to take Roald Dahl's amazing children's horror story to its zenith, but it's a great way of understanding the two parts of the brain that come from one center. And if we feed Spike, then Spike's going to control and wreck the kitchen.
Yeah. And also they're very good at having the voices of the people who said it first. When you're sitting on your own at 4 o'clock in the morning and you get that little voice that says, what makes you think you can do this?
So coming back to the neurodiversity, not everyone has that ability.
This is true. The people with aphantasia don't have little voices. You don't know how lucky you are.
They may have little voices, but they may not have a particular persona.
Well, I basically can remember many times when people have said things to me and done things, and it comes back occasionally. And in certain situations, there are triggers, and this can happen even when I'm doing things like this. Everybody seems to think that this is easy for me. Occasionally, it's not. But at the same time, there has to be something, like Pauline says, you have to kind of do it anyway. Because if you don't, if we didn't actually stretch out and put our finger to the fire to find out if it was hot or not, we would never really try anything. And it's only by trying and falling down some things that we get to see the different perspective. If you keep trying things and it goes all right all the time, you're never going to know what it's like to be thwarted. Because being thwarted sometimes can be the best thing that can happen to you, because it makes you look at it from a different angle.
If we never had to leave the cave, we'd still be cavemen.
Well, yeah. And at the moment, we've reverted, really.
Yeah, it feels like that today, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm in my cave.
I am allowed out again now, so that's quite nice.
No. I've got my cave, I've got my wee fence around my cave, I've got all my bits, don't need to go anywhere. Things come to me if I just put the phone on properly and do this and do that. Or I can go out to the shopping centre at midnight and I don't have to see anybody. Although when everybody else has the same idea, then you see everybody.
that's when you just revert to internet shopping, doesn't it?
Yeah. Don't like the idea of somebody else picking out the stuff that I would want to have.
Yeah.
They never get it right, and they put substitutes in when you don't ask them to.
So the substitutes in your shopping is what's holding you back from doing internet shopping. There you go.
No, but what's holding me back from doing internet shopping is actually watching them make up the internet shopping when I'm in the shop and seeing the kind of crap that they pick up and put into other people's bags.
Yes, don't ever order avocados.
So Dave, what about you then? What's holding you back? Or are you all sorted now?
Oh, work in progress.
Aren't we all?
I think that's true.
I think there will always be things that will come up and challenge us to go past that comfort point. For me, throughout my career, there have been things that have come up that have challenged me to go past that kind of being held back. So, obviously, the first one for me was obviously being told what I could and couldn't write and what I could achieve with literature. Well, now I'm published author, so 2 sides of A4. Nah, sorry, you got that one wrong.
That'd be a really expensive book if it was only 2 sides of A4.
I mean, that's got to be written on gold, isn't it? But then there's the medical profession, when they were trying to work out what the arthritis in my chest was, telling me that I would never be able to run again when I was getting ready to compete for Commonwealth Games. Well, did I get back to that level? No. But was I able to run again and compete? Yes. Was what the medical profession telling me right? No. But did it hold me back for a period? Yes. It's about always looking at the evidence of what's been achieved beforehand and going, actually, I broke that one. I was held back then and that didn't work. So I can go past that. I can go past this again and I can go past that and I can go past that and I can go past that. It's about challenging that perception of being held back.
Isn't it true though that the people who we are giving the power to, who are telling us what we can and can't do, are actually only telling us what they believe they can't do?
And that's what I've come to look at it as. Is, are they telling me what I can't do, or are they telling me what they can't do? Because the number of times I have gone past what other people have told me I can't do, 100% of the time I've won those conversations with myself, and I've gone past that, and I've superseded everything that other people have told me I can't do, or I can't achieve, or I'm not capable of. So what holds me back now is the time lag of getting to that point of going, oh, hold on a minute, why am I listening to you? Why have I given you the power to tell me what I can do? That's, for me, is the biggest challenge, is that time lag. And when you look at what has been achieved the last 2 years within our organization, if I listened to what everyone else said was achievable, we would not be where we are now. We're only held back by the perception of how we interpret what other people tell us. And that's external locus of evaluation. And I don't like doing that.
We definitely do build our own suits of armor that become our own limitations.
So it's down to self-belief, isn't it? If you can believe you can overcome, or if you're like me in certain circumstances, who do they think they are telling me I can't do this? There's no way they're right. Of course I'm going to beat that. I'm going to do better than what they said.
Yeah.
And it's just that kind of contrary type attitude of, no, I'm not having that.
So this
but
is
it
how we
maybe
get
doesn't
to
come
work
up often
Angela
enough.
into doing Facebook Lives.
Shushed.
You've just given us the answer.
So moving on then, what do we deal with our clients? What's holding them back? Is it a common theme through some of what's going on for our clients?
I think it depends on what they want to do versus what they think they should want to do. what's good for them ecologically as well.
Isn't it?
Sorry, Dave?
It's that conflict of internal and external and their perception of which one is most important.
Yeah, and then there's the ecological factor as well. If you're in a relationship and suddenly one day your idea that you had when you were 12 about wanting to do something, about wanting to ride horses or write a book or do something, learn the tango or something like that, and your other half is looking at you like, you want to do what? Where did this come from? But you're supposed to be here. Who's going to look after the kids? Who's going to look after me? Who's going to, you want to leave your job and do what? You want to massage somebody's feet? There's a pair there. So there are very many ways in which people in our circles actually manipulate us. And it doesn't have to be as barefaced as my example there, but it can be this idea, because my husband I don't have to actually give my husband any nonsense at all, because he does it for himself. He actually goes through, and it's that thing about the imagination. When we don't know what the monster is, we are more frightened. It's more psychologically frightening than when we actually get to see the monster, because once we've seen the monster, it's like, oh, okay. It's a guy made up of different bits of human bodies and they've been stitched together and he's got balls in his neck. He's all right as long as he's not electrocuted. Then he's, he doesn't work if he's no electricity. I can handle that. However, my husband, he will go into every scenario, every single thing that could ever go wrong that I could say that I might do, that I wouldn't even possibly do.
That
I would never think of it.
Exhausting.
Being my husband is exhausting. He's told me. But yeah, so I don't have to say anything. I really don't. Then again, there is the look.
And that's been mastered over a while.
That's, yes, I inherited a good look from my mother.
But so coming back to that point of the other voices, so whether it's a partner, whether it's your kids, whether it's your parents, whether it's your friends or co-workers, whatever else, that's where we come into our own, isn't it? That's where we get to be that unbiased voice, to listen to the clients, to say, what is going on for you and what do you really want? Is it what you think you want because somebody else has told you? Or let's get under the covers and work out where you want to go, what you want from your life. And it's got no impact on me. So I've got no emotional link to wherever you want to go. All I'm here for is to say, what do you want? And
remember that basically we're going to tell you if what you're telling us that you want is what you want, or is it the excuse that you're using not to do it because you really don't want to do it?
And that's the difference between excuses and reasons. And when we have excuses, we'll never have reasons. And if we if we don't have reasons, we'll never have results. So everything comes down to the openness of that communication between the professional and the client, and that trust, understanding, and belief between both parties, that space is there for them to explore their reality, whatever that reality might be at that moment in time. And to do that without judgment, to do that without condition, and to do that in a way that allows them to be themselves at that moment in time.
But it's all got to do with expectations and understandings of our abilities, and knowing that in some cases, those desires, those needs, those drives have been suppressed for other people's ideas and reasonings, for other people's advantages sometimes. And unlocking them can bring a whole load of stuff with it, which is why it's really important that it's done in a space, Steve said, of respect and of support. because we don't know what hitchhikers are going to come when we open those doors.
We also don't know what the impact on that client's outside world is going to be.
Yeah.
Being able to support them to be able to respond to that change on their outside world, so that they're not crushed again. Because, you know, as a coach, I'm constantly reminding people that those bricks that got thrown at them that told them they can't do something, there is nothing stopping them from rearranging those bricks into a brand new mansion. It's about understanding what they can do when they're given the space to, and allowing them to build that space.
Well, look at Richard Branson. He was dyslexic. He left school at a very early age and started up the Chrysalis record label. I think he ended up living on a narrowboat on the Thames at one point. And
it's been bankrupt more times than most billionaires.
Yeah. And so, wow.
Started in a phone box. The phone number he gave people was for the phone box at the end of his road.
Yeah.
And he would it was telephone ordering before telephone ordering. You know, the whole scenario was he'd take the orders, he'd go to his mum and dad's record shop, they would order the records, he would send them out.
But then when he had his label, it started off, it was a chrysalis. And that is the stage before it becomes a butterfly. Just before it becomes what its entire beauty is going to be. And I think that that was a really interesting choice. Somewhere.
He might have just liked the words.
He might have just liked the words, but, you know, being dyslexic, did he know what the words were really about?
It was probably one of the biggest words that he couldn't actually spell. It was his challenge word.
Yeah, but what a challenge. Look what it became.
And having watched RB work and how he engages with the teams around him, for whatever people's opinion of him as an elder businessman, his creativity, his engagement, his relationship build with the people around him, and his outlook on that engagement is the crutch that everything he built comes down to. And it's that understanding that other people have experiences that are just as valuable, and in some cases more valuable to him than his own. You know, he was the first business leader I can remember engaging with when I was doing the research, where as teams, they would literally do away with this idea of, no, what you did somewhere else doesn't matter. We do it differently here. They actually encourage people to tell them what they did elsewhere. Bring that skill set in. Let us know what lessons we can learn, and grow that experience from the widest possible group of people.
But this is it. This is another thing that holds people back. Once you learn how to do something in a certain way, particularly in some ways that it's been taught to you from a very early age, it can be terrifying to step outside of that and not do it that way. And that can be something that holds people back.
And from a change management perspective, I worked in change management for quite a while in an IT department, and we would actually call business transformation in one of the iterations of what we were doing. And it was really interesting because they had to create a business readiness team. So they were actually going out to whoever they were impacting the change on to teach them how to deal with the change. So that was a really good way of doing things, because you were then saying to people, this is coming and this is how it's going to happen. This is how it's going to impact you and all the bits that go with it. That didn't always land well. And actually the biggest challenge that we had for implementing any change was in the business transformation team. The people that were making the changes for everybody else were the ones that were more difficult to have changes happen for them to then understand it, cope with it, deal with it, and embrace it, which was quite an interesting dilemma.
And when we look
Semantically packed word, change.
When we look at the therapeutic arena, who are made up of professionals with vast range of experiences, vast range of modalities, vast range of outlooks and perceptions, all working to support their clients to affect change and growth. Yet, as a sector, we hunger after stability that we've always known. Whether that's coercive, manipulative, whatever your perception of that scenario is, we don't want that to change because that's what we know. But we'll go out there and tell everyone else how great it is to change and grow, yet our systems haven't really changed or grown on any grand scale. It just seems a bit contradictory.
But it's easier for us to help other people to do stuff and change and develop and move forwards than it is to do it ourselves.
That's always been the case though, isn't it? It's always easier to tell somebody what to do, but to show someone how it's done can be really difficult. I always used to find it easier to show someone how to do something rather than tell them how to do it, because it became something that was so natural to me doing it automatically that I would forget parts of it when I was trying to tell someone how to do it. So I would have to take them in and show them how to do it.
But it's looking at all the different modalities and learning styles, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's Wendy Dryden called it professional drift. And that ability to drift to where your client is rather than only working with your client when they meet you where you are. And that kind of holding professionals back to a modality, to a silo approach, just minimizes the capacity to provide that support. But it also, if we think about what that looks like to a client, where they're in one place and the professional's trying to get them into their modality, their place, that client's experience is going to be, well, this doesn't work for me. So perception of the therapeutic experience is it didn't work for me. They then go off, they don't engage with therapeutic processes, they have a negative perception of it, they actually put the shutters up, when actually the therapeutic sector created that perception because it didn't allow itself to drift to where the client was needed.
Also, it's very much the case in hypnotherapy, because with hypnosis, only 1 in 5 people will actually go to sleep when you tell them to, because they're naturally somnambulistic. However, the other 4 are sitting there going, I don't think so. What are you on? Not even happening. So when Erickson started, and then Dave Ellman started with the idea of conversational and not authoritative hypnosis, but permissive hypnosis and understanding, and this is all grown and evolved into the idea that, yes, we are not actually ever actually awake. We are just in different states of trance throughout our lives. We walk about in different states of being all the time. However, we haven't managed to get that across to people in such a way that they don't think we're absolutely balmy. And it's one of those things that when you realize that what you're doing is you're talking to people who have been to someone who's gone, watch the watch, watch the watch, watch the watch. And it's not working because they're not watching the watch because they don't care. It's a case of they're going to go and tell people what their experience was, and their people trust them and what their experiences were. So they're never going to actually bring it around to going to a hypnotherapist themselves. And I
think there are ways around that.
There are ways around it. But
yes, so Pauline and I know someone who had one of those experiences with a hypnotherapist and it didn't go well in any way, shape, or form. But because she met me and had a conversation with me, she was willing to see where it would go. So it's about allowing people to understand what your modality is. But what I'm also taking away from it is that Dave has now just given me permission to go and learn more therapeutic modalities so I can meet my clients where they're at, right?
And get more certificates.
More certificates. Yeah, I saw that one coming.
Yeah, we know what your total thing is going on there. You can't hide it from us.
Thanks, Dave. Dave said so.
There was
It's
no
your fault, Dave.
involved in that process at all. But over decades, that experience of how the therapeutic sector, in all its modalities, in all of its contact points, has been so stuck, so stiff, that it's almost ignored the very thing that we're doing with the client. And that has caused some of the biggest challenges. It's, for want of a better phrase, it's created a rod for our own backs.
Mm.
Because now we've got to convince the public who need us most, more than ever, that this is where they can trust, they can understand, and they can believe. But we've shown them for the last 40 odd years that actually they can't trust us, they don't understand us, and they're sure as hell ain't going to believe us.
And that's the word, though, isn't it? When it comes to what it is that holds us back, it's what we believe.
It's what we trust, understand, and believe. It's the tub rating, and it's the one thing that I spend more time in trying to help businesses understand their messaging. Is if they cannot get their message across in a way that their audience will trust, understand, and believe, they will never engage with them. And what's holding people back is that lack of trust, understanding, and belief.
But then if they don't try, they're never going to be able to get to trust. And that's another belief, because they believe they don't have to try, or it's going to be too hard to try. And change is another word that is a belief system on its own now. And I believe it's time for us to say goodbye. So until...
Well, just before you do, what I was going to just say to wrap it all up is that's why we're doing these conversations, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're doing these conversations to allow people to see that we're not scary individuals, that if we are hypnotherapists, we're not going to wave a watch in front of you and make you bark like a chicken. That's not what we're doing.
Bark like a chicken?
Exactly. So it is about that, allowing people to understand who we are as practitioners, as therapists, as coaches, and whatever else we're doing, to then have that relationship and want to come and talk to us more. So
yeah, we're humans being. Human beings being human being.
Yeah. So on that note.
And here endeth the Matrix for this evening.
Blue pill, red pill, anyone?